Welcome to the bleeding edge of digital health. Today's conversation is going to be focused around surgical logistics. While this market may not grab the weekly or monthly headlines that some of the other markets do, like surgical robotics, et cetera, its impact on clinical care and the care provided in the operating room cannot be denied. And as a result of that, with the innovation in AI and whatnot, there's obviously an opportunity there that I think is ripe for disruption. So we're going to be talking about one of those technologies today, Scalpel AI. I'd like to introduce today's guest, Yesh Pulajala, CEO and co-founder of Scalpel AI. Yesh, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Mike. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't we kick things off by just having you tell a little bit about the company and what you guys have built, and then we can kind of jump into some of the application.
Sure. So I'm a clinician by background. I've been most of my life in operating theaters, have seen how things can go wrong. I think the life-changing incident has happened when there was a wrong implant in the operating room, which was not for the patient on the table, but for the patient in the next room. I think that incident actually changed my life in a way that I realized how important surgical logistics is. Surgical logistics is often healthcare's invisible, but yet quite a critical component. Getting it right, getting the right instrument, right implant in the right operating theater is so important. It's almost as if not having the right surgeon or not having the right patient on the table. It's as important as that. So Scalpel essentially is a company that is transforming surgical logistics on its head. Today, we've built what is called as a connected surgical intelligence platform that uses computer vision, AI, and machine learning to transform that surgical logistics ground up.
Incredible. And when I think of surgical logistics, I kind of break it up into three buckets. You've got the pre-hospital surgical logistics, and then you've got obviously sterile processing, and then you've got the inner operating room surgical logistics. Give us a little background on why the pre-hospital component to that is so important, and especially related to ortho and spine technologies, and maybe some of the challenges that could present for the operating room downrange.
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that. Especially in the world of orthopedics and spine, every particular operation depends on dozens of trays packed with hundreds of instruments. And these instruments are often supplied by vendors, the likes of Strykers, Johnson & Johnson, Zima Biomeds of the world. And they travel across the states, handled by multiple players, from third-party logistic companies or distribution units, courier drivers, reps in the field, and then US sterile service divisions before those trays end up inside the operating theater. And oftentimes they play under tight constraints, time constraints, and they also need a lot of knowledge about what they're handling. The point is, one missing screw or one mislabeled implant or one wrong object could delay a surgery, and in worst cases, hours of operating theater time, or even cost tens of thousands of dollars to a hospital. The worst part is when it impacts a patient. If by chance, something kind of ends up inside an operating room, which is a wrong implant or a wrong prosthesis, that gets into the body of the patient. Now that's a patient safety concern, not a logistics concern. So surgical logistics, especially when it comes to orthopedics and spine, begins a lot before or upstream, before the trays actually get into the operating rooms. And by the way, we didn't know this as well. We started to explore the underground mechanisms to actually understand how complex these are and what is the biggest challenge of human error as well as inefficiency in those workflows.
And you guys are obviously building an AI-based company. How do you envision these AI technologies and these advanced technologies being able to impact that pre-hospital component?
So today, I'll tell you the process of how we solve for it. But basically, the end result is you have clear visibility and predictability. These AI platforms create a structure and predictability to that workflow. The biggest concern or the bottleneck in the surgical logistics is lack of assurance. So oftentimes somebody inspects the tray, they pack it, then they hand it over to the rep, and the rep once again checks it. not because they don't know what's in it. They're just basically double checking it. They're for their own peace of mind. That same check happens multiple times, almost 6 to 8 times before the tray actually gets opened up inside the operating theater. That lack of assurance is because most of the existing workflows are manual. I mean, every single time it's a manual check, making sure that that tray is right. And that depends heavily on their knowledge. And then that is time taking and inefficient. So oftentimes, because of that rush, there is a chance of cutting corners. And if they don't know exactly what they are handling, there's a chance of human error. And it's actually so big across the workflow. So what we do as at Scalpel AI is our first product is called Scalpel Active Vision, and Scalpel Active Vision is a platform that basically digitizes every physical instrument. We create a digital twin of every instrument, every tray, every movement across the supply chain. By understanding what's inside the tray, not just where is the tray, we understand what's inside the tray in real time. We can flag any missing instruments, additional instruments, misplaced instruments when the tray leaves the warehouse, when the tray is picked up by the rep, when the tray is, at the hospital, or basically connecting that entire surgical supply chain. And so that is the fundamental transformation that we're bringing. This is, think about it as level one. Level two, level three, we can talk about it in this podcast, but I think fundamentally we eliminate human error, we improve performance, we increase capacity and productivity for these large device companies.
So when, let's say that this technology gets implemented and the tray gets scanned, are you then eliminating the time necessary by the rep that day in the OR to go through that? And if so, they obviously don't do that one time a day, they do that 3 to 4 to 5 times a day. What's the time it takes for an individual to run through a set like that?
So let's take an example of a joint reconstruction procedure, like a knee reconstruction procedure. Anywhere between 6 to 8 trays are packed at a warehouse, like an instrument warehouse. That the time it takes depends on the seniority of the person who is handling the trays. So let's say the most expert person is handling it. They basically eyeball the tray. They open the tray, they just check if everything is right, right? Because they believe that they know what they're looking at, and which is all actually also right because they see it hundreds of the time. They take on an average between 10 to 15 minutes for that kit. All right. Now, for an novice or semi-skilled, that automatically gets doubled between 20 to 30 minutes. It's not only the time. I'm not worried about the time. I'm worried about the error rate because even the most expert technician we found makes human errors, and it is accepted in a way in the industry that they might make errors, which is the reason why we have multiple checks in the place, right? So that is what we have seen, that it takes about 10 to 15 minutes. Now, when that tray gets into the field inside the operating theater or at the hospital, a device rep who is there to serve the surgeon, we found that spends about 50% of the time on logistics. Sometimes they drive in the middle of the night or in the morning, like 1 hour or 2 hours in before the surgery, just to make sure that everything is right. Because in the life of a rep, the most stressful point of time is when the tray is being opened up inside the operating theater. They really pray that everything is there as the way they've examined it. And if they don't have a chance to look at it before surgery, that's a stressful moment for them. So what AI systems like Scalpel provide is that peace of mind. So we basically provide the peace of mind and assurance to every person who ever touches the surgical instrument tray.
Yeah, and it's important to remember too that they're not just worried about having the surgical trays there, not only there, but that they're accurate and fully stocked. But then they've also got to worry about the implants. Are
Yeah.
all of the implants there? Oh, do we have all the sizes? Do we have all the different models that they could potentially need? So it's not just the instrumentation that they're worried about. So that's all that's everything that we're looking at prior to the technology getting to the hospital. Let's pivot to sterile processing. What challenges exist inside sterile processing right now, and why are those so critical?
Sure. So sterile processing is almost the heartbeat of a surgical unit. Uh, Once again, people don't see it as often. That is the case. Um, But the sterile processing unit is the heartbeat because they provide you the sterile equipment that you use inside operating theater. And oftentimes these units are understaffed, overstretched, underpaid, and technicians literally pack hundreds of trays every single day. So there is a chance of human error there once again. 99% of skilled sterile service technicians are already employed. So there is a shortage of sterile service technicians in the US right now. And the number of cases that are being performed have gone up quite a lot, like close to 30% of joint reconstructions in the last 10 years. The number of cases have increased. Most of them are now being performed in the ASC world. So the requirement for a highly skilled sterile service technician is like never before. But at the same time, when errors happen in sterile services, those errors kind of show ripple effects inside the operating theater, almost like a direct impact. It's because a missing reamer or a wrong sized implant might literally cause major differences to patient safety, right? So sterile service is the second most important component of our surgical supply chain workflow automation. And today, what Scalpel does is we provide digital assistants to these SPD technicians. And these digital assistants, one, validate the trace, but two, it also assists in rapid onboarding, rapid training of technicians. So this is one example. So we did a case study here in London where we cut down the overall training time from 6 months to 5 weeks, and we've demonstrated that the productivity has gone up by 200%. And sterile processing is one of those areas where these digital twins make transformative impact, not just incremental.
Yeah, and it's not only that there's a shortage of these individuals in the market, but they get poached by competition, and so they're moving around constantly throughout all of these different facilities, and so they've got to get trained not only in the how the uh, how the facilities and everything works in that unit, but then on what the needs are for each individual doctor, because every doctor needs something different. So that
Right.
I would have to think that that's a component of this is just the short time nature of how long they're in these roles. There that probably accelerates the need as well, right?
It's a huge point you brought up because I speak to a lot of SPD technicians, and they are worried that the payment that they get is lower than what they would have got if they're working at an Uber or Amazon. So when these people leave the job to outside the SPD world, or like even to a different competitor within the healthcare system, what often happens is they take away the tribal knowledge with them. So let's say I'm a sterile service technician and I've been working with Professor Mike Moore for the last 10 years, right? Within the same hospital system. I know exactly what he wants, how his tray needs to look like. I work with him day in, day out from there with their nursing staff. So I know exactly how stuff should work. So when I leave the job, I take away all the tribal knowledge with me. So even with a new sterile service technician, they would never match your expectations. There is this gap, and that is a common factor in across the healthcare system. Like nurses hold tribal knowledge, reps hold tribal knowledge, sterile service technicians hold a lot of tribal knowledge, and that's a big component of what Scalpel AI provides. So
How do
today,
you how do you guys impact that? What component of your technology enables that to stay with the system?
yeah, so that's a great functionality that we have right now. We call it as guided workflows, which is especially for new semi-skilled technicians who are using our platform. Scalpel automatically, remember those old days when you used to have like a Windows Copilot kind of pop up and tell you what how you're using this system, this app. We have a similar Copilot that basically looks at a tray, knows what you're inspecting, and instantly pops up, hey, do not forget these things for this particular surgeon. These are the requirements. Or check for these kind of hotspots within the surgical instrument. So I think we have those unique capabilities within the system that guide and also sometimes, in some cases, test the user so that we are not building a world which lives without humans. We are building a world which humans work in a lot better manner than ever before by augmenting their intelligence using AI. So the system kind of guides them, prods them, helps them to inspect those trays quickly, more efficiently, but most importantly, accurately. So I think
Yeah.
that's how we address those components.
It's like a crib sheet or Cliff's notes for each individual physician or application. That's neat. So if we move to the operating room, this is anything that happens in the operating room is obviously critical,
Yeah.
mission critical to success. What opportunities exist for the application of AI in the operating room related to surgical workflows? How can this help the surgical team in real time?
I think I cannot basically reveal all the road functionality roadmaps for on the call, but I could tell you this much that there are two key areas where, well, maybe three key areas where Scalpel plays a huge impact. One is in terms of monitoring the utilization of surgical equipment as per what is actually planned to be used. Number two is how you use them, or how in which order you would use those particular tools, and more importantly, assisting anybody outside of the core surgical team, like the reps or the scrub nurses who are inspecting the trays before and after surgery, like giving them the peace of mind that, hey, they've got everything that is covered. And one of the biggest things that happened today, and I think a lot of people don't know this, is about 26% of the time surgery gets delayed because of surgical instrumentation, like either not having the right equipment or missing instruments or whatever. So what happens when instruments are missing? There is a circulating nurse. In other places they're called a running nurse, who basically runs out of the operating theater, goes to the storage area where the common equipment is actually stacked, then brings the tray into the operating theater. Some of the worst instances are when she brings that second tray and she opens it, that one also has missing instruments in it. So then she goes out, brings all these things kind of delay the operating theater time. And obviously every minute is, 37 to $60 depending on where you're operating. But it's also every minute more under anesthesia for the patient. So it directly impacts their recovery time, end of surgery. And especially in a world where ASCs are all about efficiency, we've got surgeons who perform 12 knee reconstructions before 12 p.m. In that world where efficiency is all about, performing at the best of your game, there is no space for human error. There's no space for, these inefficiencies in the picture. So that's where I think technologies like Scalpel AI bring transformative returns, which is one, ensuring, giving you the peace of mind that whatever is brought into the theater has all the right stuff in it, then telling you how to actually inspect and use these things in the right order. But more importantly, in a world where nurses, scrub tech, as well as reps are, expensive but also short in their like availability, AI assistants make a huge difference. It's almost like an AI co-pilot for the surgical team. I think that I'm really looking forward for the world where, it's not just an AI that is inspecting the tools, but it's workflow transformation, end-to-end workflow transformation.
Yeah. That's an interesting point. We'll get it. I'd love to get your thoughts in a minute on kind of what the future of all this looks like. But these AI technologies, they've got so much promise, but they're not all being adopted at the rate that we would ideally like, or that is probably optimal for the system. And each different market or vertical within AI is probably facing different challenges. What are the challenges you guys are facing? Why isn't every hospital using this at this point?
Yeah, so the great questions once again. So fundamentally, the AI challenges in healthcare are less about technology, more about cultural and operational challenges. So when you bring something which is changing as often as AI, there is an impact it creates on the workflows. So in the past, healthcare system is used to using systems which are like physical objects. Surgical instruments don't change their shape every single day. Sure, they change their shape when somebody breaks them, or but they don't change their shape, right? Implants, you know exactly how they come in. Big machines, capital equipment, they are like always the same. AI is not like that. It changes day to day. It will be updated regularly. Software gets better. Sometimes it gets worse. Newer models don't perform as well as you thought. So technology has one component of it, but the real impact is because of the way healthcare works is it is cautious by design. We take utmost care, and I'm a clinician by background, so I totally understand when clinicians worry about using AI at times. I understand why they are thinking about it, because of the high stake environment they are in right now. They cannot afford to have a system that doesn't work really well. But at the same time, we need to assure the teams that AI here is not replacing humans. It is supposed to work with them to augment their workflows, speed up their performance and make sure that they're performing at a higher level. So that's one aspect of it. But on the other end, there is a huge component of change management, and we need really internal champions. Like we are lucky that we are working with some of the largest healthcare systems today, where people really believe in the use of AI. There is a shift that is actually happening in the world today, where there are not many skills service, sterile service technicians or lab technicians. So there is anyway a shift that is happening towards technology, but I think the biggest shift is in terms of cultural and operational shift. How do you position these things as they are kind of being developed? And then what does it take for a rapid adoption? And just like any other innovation, there are early adopters, there are laggards on the other end. So we need to cross the chasm by building evidence every single day and then getting that system better.
How's it? Is that in relation? Because your technology is interesting in that you're really selling to two different customers. You're selling to hospitals, but you're also selling to the OEMs, the spine and the orthopedic companies. Anybody, I guess, really that has instrumentation that's delivered in sets. How is the challenges faced with the hospitals in the operating room, sterile processing? How is that different than trying to deploy this within the orthopedic and spine companies?
I think fundamentally the the expectations from the hospitals are really high compared to the OEMs, because a single hospital works with multiple vendors. So they expect your AI to work as efficiently as possible across all their equipment. Otherwise, it just doesn't make sense for them. Whereas for the OEM side, it's an efficiency game. It's a competitive advantage against how to actually provide this solution to them. So historically, I think the differentiation is about quality of these objects in terms of how exactly they are being provided by the device companies and healthcare systems. So for the device companies, the challenges that we face often is, hey, how can you make sure that this system is providing the biggest value, through and through in our workflow, in our warehouses, in our supply chain? Whereas for the healthcare systems, oftentimes the challenges we face is how do you make sure that this system works on every and all vendor equipment? So it's about the speed at which we build those tools, and then I think that's the biggest thing. On a cultural note, I think OEMs are a bit easier compared to both are tough, but I think OEMs are a bit easier than the healthcare systems in terms of what does it take to actually bring those things together.
Fascinating. It's definitely a market, like I said, that's ripe for disruption, and this is going to be the way of the future for I think both applications. How long it takes for that transition is yet to be determined, but I know you guys are working hard at solving those problems. What do you think the future of this market looks like 5 years from now? What is surgical logistics from a big picture perspective? How does that look? How drastically different will surgical logistics be in this type of application?
I think over the next 5 years, we would see surgical logistics move from a reactive position today to being proactive and predictive intelligence. And one of the biggest transformations there is use of AI, where data travels quicker than the instruments do. I think that is the fundamental difference. And as of today, if you look at present world and future world, the present world is data from every site lives at their site. And every system, like a OEM uses a ERP system, an SPD sterile processing department uses a track and trace, a hospital uses an EMR. Each one of these systems hold a separate source of truth, and they believe their source of truth is the source of truth, which is actually not, because the traces are coming from outside and going outside, right? So in a world like that, systems like Scalpel AI, who connect that interconnected ecosystem using that common thread of truth, is going to make a huge, I would say, transformative impact into one connected ecosystem. The ultimate vision really is to use AI like almost like surgery without surprise. The surprise here is that not having the right stuff. And the future is where we believe that surgery with the peace of mind that you've always got the right stuff at the right time, right place. That is powered by AI. So you're not worried about staff leaving on holidays. You're not worried about, hey, my nurse is not around. How can I perform this case at the right time? Don't worry, you've got Scalpel AI working with you. So that's the point of view. That's the worldview that we are building towards today.
Yeah, take away the jack in the box moments out of the system, because that's really where things get the delays come in, which drives cost, et cetera. If you can take that out of the system, like you said, drives a huge peace of mind, not only for the physicians, but for the administrators, the nurses, the reps, across the board, really. So, well, I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today, Yesh. We're really excited to watch you guys continue to grow and deploy this in both markets, and we'll be wishing you the best moving forward. And thanks again for taking the time.
It's a pleasure, Mike. Really enjoyed speaking to you. Look forward to speaking once again.
That's it for this edition of the Bleeding Edge of Digital Health. We'll catch you on the next episode.